You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Joe Benazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from Cboe. The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it is Thursday. It is time to rock out once again on everyone's favorite bi-weekly options extravaganza known around the globe as the Option Block. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. We've been doing this podcast thing for a while since, the primordial ooze days of 2007. That's when we launched officially. We were doing some fun stuff in late 2006, back when literally no one outside of a handful of tech aficionados knew what the hell a podcast was. Pre-iPhone, certainly the crazy, crazy time to be doing podcasting. But lo and behold, all these years later, fun to see so many folks have discovered the content. Thanks to all of you out there who continue to rate and review and listen and download and subscribe across all the various platforms. If you want even more in your lives, you folks asked for it for years. We finally broke down a few years back and said, okay, if you want even more, we'll do it for you. That's on the pro, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Again, not for everybody. If you're sated with the full network, we get it. But if you need more in your lives and you know who you are, you're the ones who were beating down our door for it for years. That's over there for you, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Great pro Q&A this week with our buddy, the captain of the UVXY Defense Force, Mr. Jim Carroll, talking all sorts of vol products. Just about every vol product under the sun came up, I think, in that pro Q&A. So if that sounds intriguing to you, or maybe a little bit of unusual activity after vol views every week. Of course, giveaways, early access. You folks are getting all the OIC stuff now. Everybody else is waiting for that. But the OIC stuff going to the pro folks first. All sorts of early exclusives. TheOptionsinsider.com pro is the place to go to learn more as we learn who's joining us on ye old program this week. First, let's go out to the tranquil, the quiet shores of the Fox River, where we are joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the show, sir.
Always happy to be here. And since you mentioned the Fox River, public service announcement, save our dams. Don't let the bad guys take away our dams. They're trying to mess with us, folks. Save our dams.
Bad guys are taking away the dams? Whoa. Dam pirates? So it's clam pirates on the shores of Maine, and you have dam pirates on the Fox River. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, and the dam pirates are the federal government, but that's a whole nother story. And the idiots that think that it would make it better.
Some folks might call the government dam pirates, but that's a conversation for another day. We won't go down that road, listeners. Instead, let's keep on rolling out to the Southern Volatility Mecca, where we are joined once again by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the show. How are you feeling on this post-Nvidia glow, sir?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like Nvidia's kind of sucking the life out of the rest of the market.
Yeah,
I thought
it's kind of weird.
we would get like a big bounce, but this is a little weird.
That was my thought exactly. A little weird. I think that's a way to describe the markets today. Before we get into that, let's introduce our final co-host here, the final paddleist on Guess Name That Password this week. He is the Flowmaster himself, Mr. Henry Schwartz from, I believe, Cboe East. Let's find out where he's beaming in from. Mr. Flowmaster, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thanks, Mark. And Mark, good to see both of you. I'm at Cboe East North because I'm actually in Midtown at a conference, but we have a little co-working space, which I've never been in before. So I jetted over here on a city bike, ran up to a nice little office we have so that I could be on the show.
I love your commitment to the show. Last week from your car, this week from a co-working. Wherever the Flowmaster is, he drops everything to come on the option block as we drop everything for the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading. And as we were just joking around a minute ago, this is a weird one. You know, we've been saying for a while, well, not us, we've been echoing what a lot of other people out there have really been saying, that it's all Nvidia's market now. Forget everything else. Forget the Fed. Forget the election. Forget whatever else you want to ascribe to these moves out there. It's all Nvidia's game. Whither goes Nvidia, so goes the rest of the market. Nvidia is now the one earnings to rule them all. And, you know, they had a banger yesterday. They kind of blew the door off again. It's kind of obscene almost how much they continue to grow over there, but that's the case. I saw some quote the other day that this is the craziest growth rate they've ever seen in the history of capitalism. I don't know if I would go that far, but folks liking themselves some Nvidia, going from a pretty obscure, mostly gaming chip manufacturer not that long ago to being the bellwether of the market. Just kind of a strange transition out there for Nvidia. I bring all that up, listeners, to say you'd think another time Nvidia knocking the cover off the ball, they'd be carrying the rest of the market with it. And certainly, if this was Nvidia's world and we were all just living it, that would probably be the case. Today's market activity may be putting a little bit of the lie to that supposition. S&P was up earlier. Now it's given up the ghost. It's slightly red. Pretty much unched, I'd say 0.01, 0.02% to the dark side right now. Still hanging out north of 5,300. Will that maintain for the rest of the session? Doesn't seem like it right now, but again, the session is young. The Dow giving up the ghost off almost a full percent right now, 0.9% coming in to start the show. NASDAQ, as you would expect, still feeling its oomph, up about 0.5%, but looks like they are off the highs out there as well. And our old friend small cap saying, look out below, off 0.9% as well. It's almost like we have this post-Nvidia just let down in the market. It's like, you know, the day after Christmas, everyone's just kind of, you got the blahs. Everyone's got the Nvidia blahs today out there. And it's just infecting the market. Right before we kicked off the show, vol was down about 0.5 point, as you would expect, down to 11.75. Kicking off the start of the show, it has moved back north of a 12 handle, about a 12.10 out there. So that puts us down about 0.15 on the week. So kind of within spitting distance of where we were on Monday. Speaking of Monday, and we mentioned at the top of the show, we are off for the Memorial Day holiday I always forget by the end of the show, and it's too late. So I'm going to say it now. We are off for the Memorial Day holiday. No OB, no crypto rundown on Monday. Don't come at me. Come at those pirates Uncle Mike was talking about who say we have the day off. Hey, go enjoy yourselves. Get away from your screen for a little bit. We'll be back with more content for you on Tuesday. Now let's go around the horn. It's a funky one. Let's start with the Meatball. Mr. Meatball, sir, we were just talking about, seems like a bit of post-Nvidia malaise infecting the market. What do you think, sir?
Yeah, it's a really weird one. Look at the range on an AMD today. It opened up 7, is now down 3. A lot of the chip makers are down. Intel's down 3%. You're getting a little bit bullishness out of like Marvell, Micron, Qualcomm. But really, it's Nvidia is up, and then Google's down. Apple is down. Microsoft is now flat. Meta went from up to down, is now flat as well. I mean, there's just not a lot of good things on the screen that I'm looking at right now. Target, after a terrible day yesterday, getting a little bit of a lift, but by and large, Nvidia is just like, I will take all of your gains right now, and you will die. That is what it is doing to this market. Pretty crazy.
I guess Nvidia is truly the vampire. It's just sucking all the life out of the market and saying, give me that. Give me all that, and you guys get nothing. But yeah, I did not have in my bingo card, Nvidia crushing it again, and then the rest of the market just, I wouldn't say falling out of bed, but definitely lingering to drifting downward afterward. Does seem like there's maybe a bit of a post-Nvidia, post-AI hangover out there. Mr. Flowmaster, same question for you, sir. A weird one. Maybe you had this on your bingo card. I don't know, but a weird one out there. What do you make of this kind of malaise post-Nvidia we're seeing in the market, sir?
Yeah, I was talking to some guys that I trade with, and they said, yeah, Nvidia's up and everything else is down. And that kind of is right. And yeah, it's some big moves. What's funny is I put out a note earlier this week that volume, we had a really, really light volume day on Monday. Today's Thursday. On Tuesday, barely like 33.5 million contracts traded, and that's really, really light when we're talking averages closer to 47 this year. I'm looking at Nvidia might trade 3 million contracts today, so that's exciting. Definitely exciting for anybody that was long it into earnings. But yeah, the rest of the names, kind of meh. I mean, I get it's just become a really weird week. Like obviously it's into a holiday, things get pretty light anyway, but we kind of all agree there was a lot of complacency. Vol was low. Now Vol's even lower now, although part of that is the holiday effect. I was going to say, well, maybe it's kind of a matter of dispersion, right? Which, Cboe has this dispersion index, which I worked through the calculations on, but, in the simplest form, it's pretty much VIX minus the component volatilities of the S&P 500. And so I was about to say, well, dispersion must be really high because we see NVIDIA up. But the truth is actually this dispersion index, it's high for the last 6 months, but it's come way off of where it was about a month and a half ago, which is just kind of telling you that things are actually moving together. NVIDIA's, I think, is kind of today's outlier. So definitely a weird time, but in a way, I think a lot of people are just kind of not doing anything this week. So, it's nice to see volume, at least volume today overall is going to be, almost closer to like 48 million contracts. So we're kind of back in terms of total volume, but man, a lot of that is NVIDIA.
The whole market's got the post-Nvidia blues. Look at you teasing us with the dispersion index. Now, you guys down at the Cboe, you get us all hot and bothered with your press release. What was it, 6 months ago? We're coming out with this dispersion index. And then I go talk to you guys down, I think it was Boca, and they're like, yeah, it's not coming anytime soon. Not this year. So you get us all excited.
Tradable products, yeah.
Yeah.
Tradable products are a ways off.
You get us all excited for trading some dispersion. Then, put it away in your calendar for another year or two. But it's a cool idea. Looking forward to seeing it in our hot little hands and indeed on our trading screens sometime in the future as we go out to the land of St. Charles, where, aside from the damn pirates, they seem to be unaffected by any sort of blues. Mr. Uncle Mike, do you, like the rest of the market, seem to have the post-Nvidia blues today?
That's what it looks like, because I, like everybody else, was thinking NVIDIA is the market. If you'd have asked me that 24 hours ago, I would have thought where NVIDIA goes, the market's going to go. But NVIDIA is going higher, and the market's doing not a lot right now. We started higher. I think the S&P opened like 30 points up on the day, and that was that. And it gave a lot of it back, or all of it back, I should say. And that's pretty much what's happening on the market side of it. The other thing that I'm monitoring right now is silver's pulling back a little bit. We can talk about that a little bit more on TWIFO in about an hour and a half. Looking forward to that, by the way. And seeing that happen, bonds are getting having a little bit of a sell-off right now. Nothing too major, but definitely more sellers than buyers in the bond market today. And I think everyone just wants to buy NVIDIA. Sell everything I got, buy NVIDIA. That seems to be the general theme that I can echo from my other co-hosts.
Is that your approach right now? Just long 1 million shares of NVIDIA and then the hell with everything else?
I mean, that's what I did yesterday right before the close. I sold all my client assets and just put it all in NVIDIA. So we're pretty happy today. Except
for that little bit. You are a responsible guy. You did diversify a little bit into Shiba Inu. I know you.
No, I went all NVIDIA yesterday. Oh. If I'm going to get my lawyers and compliance people to want to shut me down, I'm at least going to make my lie really big.
All right. Good stuff. Let's see if there's good stuff for the rest of the market out there, shall we? Is it a banger day? I guess we'll find out. I think the hint of the post-Nvidia blues should give you some indication of where we're hanging out, but that's not the case for everything. As is often the case out there in the markets, listeners. It depends where you're hanging your hat out there. Let's start in VIX, where we like to do, and VIX, doing decent. You wouldn't say this is, NVIDIA rules the market, and this is the kind of volume we see on, let's say, a post-Fed day, anything like that. It's 459,000 contracts. It's decent volume for heading into close to a long holiday weekend. Obviously, one more session ahead of us. But it's not blowing the doors off. It's not 1 million contracts already or anything like that. The ADV 807, so remaining kind of firm out there after giving up about 100,000 plus contracts out there in VIX land. SPY, though. SPY taking the bit in his teeth. 4.9 million contracts on the tape. So that's well ahead of where we usually expect to see it, 4.25, 4.5, somewhere in that range right now. So decent volume out there. The ADV 7.09 million. Might hit that by the end of the show at this rate. The S 1.75 million. So also looking pretty robust out there, listeners. That's about where we expect it to be now. And the ADV a little bit shy of 3 million, 2.8 million. So all in all, a decent day out there in the S from a volume perspective as well. Small caps also following suit, saying, you know what? Don't forget about us. 775,000 contracts on the tape. So that is a pretty active day. Again, we said small caps are giving up the ghost today, off nearly 1%. So you'd expect some hot action out there, and they're delivering. The ADV is 1.09 million. They might get to that by the end of the show as well. And the Qs also looking robust, which again, post-Nvidia, you would expect 2.51 million. Usually expect them around 2.2 or so this time of show. The ADV just slightly over 3. So again, they could hit that by the end of the show as well. So on the broad index front, it's mostly a pretty active day with the exception of VIX out there. Let's go out to single names. Are single names following suit? Or has this post-Nvidia malaise, the blues, call it what you will, has it infected everything? Let's find out. Cost us 240,000 contracts to break into the top 10 this week, listeners. That gets us to our old pal AMC. This one has been fun to watch over the last couple of weeks out there. It's on again. It's off again. Who's tweeting what? That's driving this thing north. AMC today, number 10. 240,000 contracts, off about 12 cents, so trading right around $4.94 today. So not a banger day out there by any means, but good enough for the number 10 spot. Number 9, the artist formerly known as Facebook, 253,000 contracts, 467 even, off about 78 cents. On the day, though, it's had quite the banger range, over $9. 465.13 on the dark side and 474.36 on the light side. So that's quite the range on the day. Obviously, we're hanging out towards the lower end of that right now. So Meta feeling some of those post-Nvidia blues out there. Number 8, off to China. It's Baba. Is China on again or off again today? Looks like China is off again, listeners. 80.75, off nearly $2 or about 2.3%. They've had about a $2.50 range, high of around $83, the low of about 80.5. So obviously near the lower end of their range out there as well. Good for 260,000 contracts. And the number 8 spot out there, listeners, number 7, keeping it in the chips. You know, you're talking about NVIDIA. What else is cooking in the rest of the chip market? Let's go out to Taiwan Semi. 159, about 20, up about $3 exactly, or about 2%. Let's see, on the day they've had a little over a $5 range, 150, actually a little under, 155.86 to the dark side and 160.78 to the upside. So maybe not as active of a day post NVIDIA for Taiwan Semi as you might expect. Either way, they're in there. Number 7, 272,000 contracts on the tape for them, listeners. Number 6, a name we don't normally see in our top 10 out there, listeners. This is Pinduoduo, aka PDD, Chinese ADR out there, trading 155.60, up about $8.50. So apparently, in this name, China is back on again. A good banger day for them out there, listeners. They are also the parent company of Temu, the one you're seeing all those ads for out there, listeners. So apparently a good day for them. 275,000 contracts. They are not feeling the post-NVIDIA blues out there. Let's see what everybody else is feeling out there, listeners. Time for our run of A tech names, listeners. Let's kick it off in the newest member of the Dow, the Amazonians. 301,000 contracts for number 5. 182.17, off about $1 today. They've had a range of 184.75 on the upside and 182, pretty much even on the dark side. So decent little range out there, not explosive. Amazon, number 5, 301,000 contracts. Number 4, keeping it in the A tech names as promised. It's Apple, giving up some of that shine it's gotten post Tim Cook buyback. 188.2, off about 2.25, 1.2%. Again, it's like just the bloom coming off everything. Maybe I'm not going to put this dramatic exclamation point on this, but it does have the whiff of maybe we just exhausted the bulls for a while. After NVIDIA, they're like, all right, we got nothing left. All coming back in. We'll see. 188.2, off about 2.25 right now. Had a range of 191 to the upside, 188.40 actually to the dark side. So obviously hanging out near the lower end of its range today. Coming in at number 4, 543,000 contracts. And you'd expect this next name to have a banger day out here. Keeping it in the A techs, it's AMD. Coming in at number 3, 1.06 million contracts. So you know something's afoot. Either their earnings or NVIDIA earnings are going to drive that kind of volume. You know what it is today. 161.2, off nearly $4 or 2.3%. They've had a range of 173.14 to the upside and 160.39 to the dark side. So they've had quite the range intraday out here. So again, a lot of living being done post-Bell here for a lot of these names out there today. And most of them settling in towards the lower end of that range now. AMD number 3, 1.06 million. What could eclipse it out there today? I think you could probably guess. But what is number 2 and what is number 1? Again, I think you probably guessed that today as well. Today is one of the few days where Tesla can't hold on to the crown. 176.95, off a little over $3, about 3.15, nearly 2%. Good for 1.07 million contracts on the day. High of about 182, low of 175.15. So hanging out towards the lower end of their range today as well. Again, good for decent paper, what you normally see out there, which is about 1.07 million this time of day. So you know what the number 1 is. The Flowmaster already gave it away at the top of the show. It's NVIDIA, north of 1,000 listeners, 1,057, up 108 handles, or 11.4%. Spoiler alert, good move. That's nearly 2 million contracts on the tape, 1.98 million out there. So a banger day for them. Speaking of numbers, let's get out to here really quick. We obviously have the numbers in our hot little hands for all the names popping off, but there's only one you really want to talk about, unless you're really excited about Snowflake, listeners. That was yesterday after the bell. Kind of lost in the noise there. 163.30 is where they were going to their announcement. The pricing in nearly 10%. They delivered 3.3%. So underperformance from Snowflake, but everybody's here for NVIDIA, listeners. Again, they're about $9.50 going into their announcement. You know what they delivered now. They were pricing in at the time about 7.9%, which was around $78. In fact, that was our question of the week this week, listeners. We asked you folks, the At the Money straddle, trading for about $78 at the beginning of the week heading into NVIDIA's announcement. That's roughly $10 more than they've averaged in terms of movement their last few announcements. Is that too cheap, too expensive, or just enough? Are you folks just not touching NVIDIA. And that latter one was the answer. Exactly 50% of you folks coming in saying you're not touching this with a 10-foot pole. A 9.5% each now for it's a Goldilocks straddle, just right. And also, it's too cheap. $78 not enough. And then 31% of you coming in for number 2 at it's a little too pricey, too much. And it turns out, listeners, maybe not enough. Like I said, we're up $108, so outperforming that straddle by a whopping $30, 11.4%. So apparently the answer was too cheap, which is always fun when we have a concrete answer to all of these polls. Right now, the season hanging out still pretty robust, 112%. We had a bit of a hiccup in week 5, only 84% being delivered. So some of the vol coming off the rows there, but every other week pretty much has been a banger this cycle, including this past week so far, 128%. So a lot of outperformance this past week, all that averaging into, 111% actually out there, which is just slightly above our long-term average of 109%, which in and of itself is already ridiculously high. Never seen it that high before, and now we're above it again. So I guess buying vol has been the order of the day out there on the earnings front. Well, let's see what else folks are buying or maybe selling. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's get to it. The world of the weird and the wild and the just wacky, perhaps even, dare I say it, the whimsical. Let's see what the Flowmaster has in store for us this week as we let him off the chain and he comes back to us with Bloom Energy Corp, ticker symbol BE. We haven't talked about this one, but it's been a little bit. Trading 1640 right now, off a little over $0.50 today, so not exactly a banger day, off a little over 3, about 3.25%. On the year, though, you can probably guess for an energy name, they've had a decent run of late. That turns it into a decent year, up about $1.50 or a little over 11% on the year. A year ago, it's 1483. They rallied to their high of about 18.75 back in July before giving up the ghost pretty much for the rest of the year until about a month ago. They hit their low for the year around April 22nd, almost exactly a month ago. And then since then, they've rallied from about 840 up to 1640. So they've pretty much doubled. So a nice little run here for Bloom Energy. They make solid oxide fuels. So there you go. Mr. Flowmaster, a hot name the last month. What caught your eye in Bloom Energy, sir?
So, yeah, this was kind of interesting. I actually jumped into a trade on this yesterday, just after 10 a.m. Just after 10 a.m., I saw a buyer of almost 5,200 of the June 18 calls from 86 to 87 cents. And those were opening. Stock was at 1635 at the time. Vol was up 5 points. It was a big aggressive sweep. It was the kind of flow that I like to try to piggyback on. And the stock did start to lift a little bit. I think it was good for about a 20 or 30 cent scalp. But looking at about a minute later, there actually was a seller of some June 16 calls, a little bit longer than that, so about 20 minutes later. And so they paid 86 cents for about 10,000 of the June 18 calls on the day. And those did net open. We could kind of tell that at trade time. And then they sold the June 16s when the stock was at 1635 when they bought the 18s, and then stock got up to $17, and they sold the June 16s. And the open interest change shows that the June 16s were closing. So this looks to me, and then I can check trade history in Trade Alert, and I actually can see that the June 16 calls were opened up for 30 cents at the beginning of March, and they sold them out for $1.95. They got into a bigger position of the June 18s, so they're continuing long, but they made a chunk of change on those June 16s. And one thing I thought was pretty interesting, I don't know if this was intentional or just nice timing, but the fact that they decided to buy those 18 calls first and the stock really got a lift, possibly people like me jumping into the stock, got them a great price on their exit of the June 16s. So, and one of the things at this conference that I'm at today that was mentioned is energy as an indirect play on AI. And I realized this only during when one of the panelists mentioned it. Did you know that Amazon bought a nuclear power plant recently, like within the last week or two?
That I did not know.
Yeah, that I did not know.
Yeah, Google it, you'll find it.
That's what we need is Jeff Bezos with now nuclear
He's got
power.
his finger on the button.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well,
he literally is turning into Dr. Evil.
If you read the release, it's basically to get them, carbon-free power for their data centers. And so the discussion was a little bit how was mentioned just in terms of what Amazon would really be using that for versus in the context of AI too. But energy is this play on AI, right? NVIDIA was one of probably the most high profile play on it, but that's why a lot of these energy names, there's, I forget the ticker on one. There's one that actually kind of specializes in server centers, which is up huge in the last couple months. So this was just kind of a night. Yesterday, it's funny. This whole week has been kind of just directionless. Today's an exception. We started out really strong. The broad market faded. NVIDIA is not stopping. But in the end, if you look at small caps and mid cap are struggling a little bit, but things aren't moving that much. So it's been that kind of week. And so, when you have that kind of week, people play around, as Tom Sosnoff, has said it on the air. There's a lot of available capital for people to deploy very quickly when they're motivated to. So that was it. I made a little bit of money in the stock. Everything it's actually faded today. Like I said, everything except NVIDIA seems to be down a little bit. So it's no exception. But it was a good play for just kind of an unusually large, very directional, aggressive trade.
Mr. Meatball, sir, is this one been on your radar? Sounds like these folks made some cash, which again, not surprising. The stock has nearly doubled over the past month. So you buy any calls, you're going to be looking pretty good. But also interesting that they're keeping the party alive. They're not done. Is this Bloom Energy on your radar, sir?
No, I actually, one of the things I've been looking at is energy production for AI and how much demand there is going to be. This was not one on my radar, but you can look at like Vistra Energy. Look at the run that's had, and that they're supplying to data centers. An interesting one is like SMR. You ever heard of New Scale Power Corporation?
Your buddy,
Probably
the Rocklosser, has been talking that one up on Oddities for a while. Yes.
Andrew loves that one. But this is one I got in at $250, and it's $7, and they do tiny nuclear reactors. So I think that it's energy is an interesting space to look at if you want to jump on AI.
Got to power all those data centers somehow. Maybe you buy your own nuclear reactor like Amazon did out there, which is an interesting, disturbing, potentially explosive development in and of itself. Speaking of explosive development, let's see what we could pay off here. The Flowmaster joins us every week, but he's been analyzing a lot of flow out there. We also have some of our own flow. I mentioned last week we were going to pay these off this week. So let's start here. Let's go out to the ever sexy land of REITs, listeners. Yeah, you know them, you love them. People certainly love to buy puts on them these days. Ever since the Fed started talking about jacking up rates, we've seen enormous amounts of capital put into buying puts on REITs. For the most part, most of those trades have not worked out, which is kind of surprising, maybe a little bit counterintuitive given the environment we find ourselves in for the last year and a half. But that's where we find ourselves. Last week on the show, on the 13th, we talked about somebody coming back to play, this time in Medical Properties Trust, ticker symbol MPW. Another one that the chart looks like a bit of a blood stain for the year, all red, off over 35%. And someone came in last week and decided to get near term with it, get a little funky with it, and by the May 5 puts expiring tomorrow. So this was a rare, pretty much 2-week put play in the REITs. You don't see that. Usually you see people go out in a few months, buying a little bit of time. You don't see weekly trades very often in REIT puts, so it kind of caught our attention. 11,460 of these bad boys were going up. Paid nearly 21 cents for them. Bought them for a little over 20 cents on splits. Let's see. There were earnings on the 6, so it wasn't an earnings play. Maybe they were betting on a crazy hot CPI number really causing the Fed to get aggressive. It seemed like a crazy one to us. That's why we profiled it. 101 volatility on a REIT put. You don't see that too often. And coming into today, at the start of the day, the stock was around 5.25. So it seemed like these were pretty much dead. But that said, the stock has drifted below $5 today. So I was about to say these puts were done. The stock opened and sold off down to about 484. So these were in the money. And then the stock shot up at around noon to about 535. And now it's drifting back down to 510. So I was about to say these were dead. There are still 34,000 of these puts open on this strike. So it seemed like that money was going the way of the dodo, and paper would have dropped about, not quite $250,000, but close, about $237,000 on that initial trade. That could obviously still come to pass, but they have about a day and a half left, and the stock has already been below the 5 strike. I haven't seen them close these out today, but they had a chance, not quite for a winner, but maybe they could have taken them off for a little bit of money this morning. But intriguing stuff. Mr. Flowmaster, I'm sure you've noticed this trend over the past year and a half of people loading up on size puts in a REIT. I can't recall people going this near dated in recent history out there. And also, I can't recall many, if any, of these that have paid off. But maybe these have a chance, sir. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, with REITs, you have to be really, really, really careful about what they actually own, right? It's a broad category for real estate. It can be, offices, which everybody, points to as very, very, very dangerous at the moment. This one, if it's medical facilities, I would think it'd be a little less in dire straits. I mean, medical and retail seem to be doing a lot better than office space. It doesn't look like, I don't know. I mean, we certainly could get a pretty big swing. It's a lot of gamma, that's for sure. I mean, if you look at how much stock trades a day in this thing, average daily volume is about 20 million shares of stock. So it's a lot of stock to hedge if we really do start to oscillate. We're at 509 right now. So, maybe they're low delta, but they will very quickly go to 1 delta if we move. So I don't know. At this point, I'm not too sure about these short-term trades. You're right. Usually they don't work out. Sometimes they're against some other position that, might even be exotic or something. But I guess it's one to watch that. If we watch that 5 line, if we get down to 503, 502, I think you'll probably see a lot of swinging around.
Be some gamma explosions in the next 36 hours out here in MPW. Mr. Meatball, this is a trend you and I have discussed once or twice over the past year and change now, which is folks, for the most part, throwing a lot of money away on sizable put positions in REITs. It makes sense. I think when we all heard the aggressive rates were coming, it made sense to fade these things. Hasn't really worked out for a variety of reasons. This is one of the nearer dated one of these trades that we've seen. Looks like it was garbage this morning, but now maybe looking all right. I don't know. What are your thoughts on these couple of weak puts in MPW, sir?
Anytime MPW gets a rally, these guys do step in and start to buy puts on this thing, and it invariably does pay off the long-term buyers. This is one I'm actually long puts in myself after I saw some order flow in it, I want to say early last week. But MPW is, their portfolio is not the best. Let's just put it that way.
No, not great. Oh, Mr. Flowmaster, we noticed this one as well. You got another one up your sleeve out there today. Let's go back to our old friend Bumble, a.k.a. the ladies looking for a little bit of love. Was like the hot IPO, or one of the many hot IPOs, back in that heady period. Has there ever been a better time in history to go public than February of 2021? Maybe you could argue late 1990s, but February 2021, pretty good time. And they were trading close to $80 at that time. And oh, how the mighty have fallen. It's been pretty much a straight downward chart for this thing, all the way down to where we find them today, $11.50. We've been talking about a lot of size put writers out here in Bumble. And for this chart, you think they'd be getting run over, but they've actually been pretty deft at their strike selection. And for the most part, they've been skating and keeping all their premium. Mr. Flowmaster, looks like you've been keeping tabs on our put friends out here. What'd you find out here in Bumble today?
Yeah, we've definitely mentioned this one before. So almost 45,000 of the June 28th 10.5 puts were sold today. Almost 12 cents they got for them, 11.8 cents. And this does just, if you look at the chart of option volume, there's just these periodic spikes that approach 100,000 contracts. So, I think I've mentioned this before. This looks to me like we used to call them the put bomber, which were put blocks that were so big that you got the feeling like the seller was perfectly happy to just take the entire company if it got down to their strike. So, I'm looking at the open interest. I mean, there's 57,000 of the June 21st 9 puts, which is this person as well. So, I mean, it certainly looks like it. So, it seems like they're pretty comfortable being short 100,000 puts, and they don't seem to mind if the stock continues to kind of trudging a little bit lower. But you're right. Most of the time, they kind of get away with it. I haven't seen any of them expire in the money. But the 9 strike, and then today you've got the 10.5. It's there. It's $1 away. It's only 5 weeks till expiration.
Yeah, they've been skating on most of these, and the size is kind of ridiculous. You're right. It does seem like they want to just maybe acquire this company, but maybe not at the same time, because they do seem to skate on getting the stock actually put to them most of the time. But you're right. The size is off the hook. So if they did get it put to them, they would have a pretty sizable chunk of Bumble. Given this chart, I don't know if that's what you want, but it's an intriguing one nonetheless. Speaking of intriguing, let's do one more here. We got to pay off some of your paper, Mr. Flowmaster. You're always throwing trades out into the ether, hither and yon, and we love that. And we got to pay some of those off now, including this one. I recall this one. You brought this to our attention back about a month ago, April 25th. This is Geo Group. They are the publicly traded private prison company, listeners. Also mental health facilities. So they dance on all sides of the line in very interesting ways, including in South Africa and the UK. So South African prisons, interesting stuff. Either way, Geo Group. This one has had quite the odyssey. We joked about this. We're like, who needs NVIDIA when you've got private prisons? Because a year ago, the stock was about, $7, and actually dipped below it, $6.94. And it got up to $16.31. It got as high as $16.31 early April, so a little over a month ago. When we talked about it on the show, listeners, the stock was about a little shy of $15, 14.75. And the Flowmaster pointed out someone coming in to just overwrite the hell out of this thing. They had earnings on May 7th. The stock had popped pretty hard, 40% in 6 weeks to the upside. A lot of people, though, were taking the upside and saying, gimme all that premium, selling a boatload of the 15 calls expiring on the 10th, so right after earnings. So clearly trying to harvest a lot of that earnings juice. At the time, a total of 14,000 had gone up. And guess where the stock went out, listeners, on May 10th? It went out at $13.48, which is about 30 cents below where it is right now. So by my math, that is below the 15 handle. So those calls went out worthless. They were all still open. Looks like they sold the bulk of them for around 45 cents, Mr. Flowmaster. So that would mean they pocketed somewhere around $630,000 on that. Obviously, if you add up all the volume, it's even more. But looks like a pretty decent overwrite, all things considered, Mr. Flowmaster. Do you agree?
Yeah, it doesn't pay a dividend either, right? So they picked up a nice yield on that. It's kind of what you want, right? If you want to pick a name that's going to, be sideways or has had a good run that you're comfortable giving away some upside on. If it continued higher, I wonder if they would have covered it, just so that they wouldn't have to pay taxes on the stock gains. So it looks like a pretty successful one. It'll be interesting to see if they come back, if the stock gets back up, towards that $15 level again.
Mr. Meatball, this is not a sector that was on my radar, and now it certainly is. Are you an avid watcher of the private prison sector, sir? And what are your thoughts on Geo Group?
Yeah, it's a tough one to they're not exactly politically popular, are they? But the stock has had its ups and downs, but it's currently toward the upper end of its range, just below its 50. I mean, it looks like it wants to go to $20. It does.
Not in the near term, though, at least not in time for this guy to sell a whole bunch of calls to the upside and get paid, listeners, as it's time for us to keep on rolling into Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, listeners, welcome to Around the Block, where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on until our next show, which, again, not on Monday. Our next show a week from now. So we're all the Flowmaster right now. We're not coming back on the old OB until next Thursday. Really quickly, let me pay off some of our questions of the week. I already mentioned our NVIDIA one. Obviously, $78 was too cheap. Stock moving quite a bit. The rest of the market, not so much, at least not in the same direction as NVIDIA. We also had some other questions you folks chimed in on, including last week we asked you about the much anticipated Bitcoin ETFs. Will we see them even this year? Yes or no? Again, if you want more insight into that, check out, I believe, my conversation with the folks at NYSE, hitting the tape as we speak right now on the network. You folks on the Pro already heard it. More to that to come. So if you want to see how all the various entities in the space view all these things, the Bitcoin options, the zero-day Teslas, 24-hour trading, all the hot button issues of the day, I put it to all of them on your behalf, listeners. You could hear their thoughts directly if you're staying tuned to the network. But spoiler alert, a lot of them were kind of down on the prospects for these things. And you folks sound like you agree. 56.5% of you saying we will not see these options in our hot little hands this year. 43.5% say yes. Also, we did a fun flash poll last week during Vol Views. We were talking about the July 11 puts going up for size for a nickel. And you know we love a good little cheapy put in VIX land, listeners. So we put it out to you folks. Would you rather buy them or sell them for a nickel? And 58.3% of you said you wanted to buy them. Usually you folks are premium sellers at that level. But nope. So that, of course, meant we had to buy them. Myself and the Rock Lobster both worked bids for a nickel. I was not filled. I don't know if he was. But intriguing stuff out there as we go around the horn. Uncle Mike, we have lots of intriguing stuff on the horizon for all of us. Unfortunately, not on Monday, where we all get a well-deserved rest. But what is on your radar, sir, until we gather here together next Thursday?
Well, a couple things. First off, I'd definitely be a buyer of those puts, just because of the fact that I don't care what the underlying is, what anything is, there's no way on earth I'd ever sell an option for a nickel. So I would definitely be a buyer without even having a sentiment on it. So with that being said, just watching to see excuse me, how the stock market reacts to today's NVIDIA earnings. Might still be digesting them. You never know. And maybe everybody will sell their NVIDIA and buy SPY by the end of the day. You never know. So watching to see that reaction, as well as watching silver and gold with the sell-off that they've had today, and just seeing where we're at with everything. Till next time.
And speaking of selling off, listeners, as we're coming into the end of the show here, seems like most of that green on the screen starting to evaporate. We have S&P off about 0.4%, so fully into the red now. Dow off about 1.25%, so firmly getting the bit in its teeth to the dark side. And the NASDAQ, the one name that was up, is pretty much flat right now, and VIX continues to drift north at about a 12.35. Was at 11.75 going into right before the start of our show. So VIX getting a little bit frothier out there as well. Again, not perhaps the response most of us assumed from NVIDIA, but then again, you know what happens when you assume. Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on until the show again next Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, what is going on with this market? We're now down almost 0.5%. Things are getting worse. NVIDIA is now one of the few stocks that's still up. I want to see if was this the top today? Mike mentioned interest rates at the top of the show. If we're not going to rally with AI and interest rates start creeping higher again, that's the recipe that we saw in April, and it wasn't a great recipe. So wondering if the sell in May and go away is going to hit us this last week.
I didn't want to read too much into these tea leaves, but you're right. I was having that same feeling when I saw this earlier today. I was like, this feels kind of toppish. But again, we've all said that before, and look what the market has done. It's laughed in all of our faces. But yeah, this certainly is a strange result, to put it mildly. Mr. Flowmaster, you get the last word on it this week. What are your thoughts on this increasingly dire post-Nvidia malaise, sir?
Well, I think that you got to remember, we've had such a dead, I calculated the realized vol, I think for the last 2 weeks, at least through yesterday, was about 6. So we've had an incredibly calm market, and we've traded, I think we traded higher 7 days out of 10. So there's a little bit of a pullback. I mean, VIX is not even at 13. So I think we're extra sensitive to kind of a move. And there is a pretty big range in S&P. I think we were up 37 early in the day. Right now we're down 25, 30. So, but it's just been quiet. I think it just feels a little bit scary. I would continue to just kind of look for opportunities and, be careful not to make your trades too big.
We'll have to leave it there for this week. Listeners, not to fear, though. I will be back in a little bit talking all things futures options with our old buddy Dan, the man, Gramza. If you want more Uncle Mike in your lives, though, stay tuned for next week, where I will be joined by the Unklest of Mikes talking all things silver. And Mr. Uncle Mike, in the meantime, if folks want to talk silver with you right now, where should they go? What should they do?
By all means, you can go to my website, stcharleswealth.com, set an appointment with me. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation on silver, gold, markets, 80s history, whatever you want to talk about. I will be having another webinar on the 4th of June. 60-40 versus hedged equity. We'll be talking about the pros and cons of each. For information on that, it's not the blurb isn't up there yet, but it will be shortly. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Tosaw, Tosaw, and follow me on LinkedIn as well.
You're late to the party. We've already declared 60-40 dead on our advisor's option show, sir. So stick a fork in it. It's done. There is no more 60-40. Actually, we just had a fun chat with your buddy, Mr. Philip's son. From Adaptive, earlier this week on the advisor's option. You can hear that right now on the network, listeners, if you are so inclined. And if you're so inclined, check out Uncle Mike Tosaw. Help him fight the damn pirates at stcharleswealth.com. And Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir, as we're all kind of digesting this weird post-Nvidia market. If folks want some help doing that, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter. I got Andrew and I on our Director of Product Development, Hannah, are giving a little presentation on, 0DTE tonight. That's on Thursday. If you miss it, feel free to tweet at me. I can send you the replay at Option Pit.
At Option Pit on the old Twitters to check them out. You give the Flowmaster a follow on the old Twitters as well. He has, of course, Option Alert for the main business. Mr. Flowmaster, are you tweeting out a lot on your Schwartz NYC handle these days, sir?
No, Option Alert is the best place. I definitely, we have plenty of stuff that posts automatically, and then every once in a while I'll fire out a quick note on something. In fact, I think I fired out that Bloom Energy yesterday right as it printed. So follow me there.
I will say your Schwartz NYC handle says you're a grill master. I'm intrigued just for that alone. Can I get some grilling tips on the old Schwartz NYC?
Yeah, maybe I gotta up the content.
Grill master extraordinaire, the flow, not just a flow master, but a grill master. Give them a follow. Option Alert on Twitter, listeners. We retweet them all the time. If you're intrigued by his grilling, Schwartz_NYC on Twitter, and of course, you know where to go for all this data we're talking about here, literally throughout the show. Good thing the Flowmaster's here because he provides all this great data. Cboe.com/RMA, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. That's going to do it for us today. Again, no show on Monday. I'll be back in a little bit, though, with Twifo, and then we're all back again next Thursday, another episode of The Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.